came up to him and said to him, "Where is your teacher whom you followed?" John said to him, "He has returned to the place from which he came." The Pharisees said to him, "This Nazarene has deceived you badly, filled your ears with lies, closed your minds, and turned you from the traditions of your parents." When I, John, heard this, I turned away from the town and went to a mountainous and barren place. I was distressed within, and I said, "How was the Saviour selected? Why was he sent into the world by his Father? Who is his Father who sent him? To what kind of eternal realm shall we go? And what was he saying when he told us, 'This eternal realm to which you will go is modelled after the incorruptible realm'? But he did not teach us what that kind of realm is. At the moment I was thinking about this, look, the heavens opened. All creation under heaven lit up, and the world shook. I was afraid, and look, I saw within the light a child standing by me. As I was staring, it seemed to be an elderly person. Again, it changed its appearance to be a youth. Not that there were several figures before me, rather there was a figure with several forms within the light. These forms appeared through each other, and the figure had 3 forms. The figure said to me, "John, John, why are you doubting? Why are you afraid? Are you not familiar with this figure? Then do not be faint-hearted. I am with you always. I am the Father. I am the Mother. I am the child. I am the incorruptible and the undefiled one. Now, I have come to teach you what is, what was, and what is to come, that you may understand what is invisible and what is visible, and to teach you about the unshakable race of perfect humankind. So now, lift up your head, that you may understand the things I shall tell you today, and that you may relate them to your spiritual friends, who are also from the unshakable race of perfected humankind. I asked if I might understand this, and it said to me, "The one is a sovereign that has nothing over it. It is God and Father of all, the invisible one that is over all, that is uncorruptible, that is pure light, at which no eye can gaze. That one is the invisible Spirit. We should not think of it as a God or like a God, for it is greater than a God, because it has nothing over it and no Lord above it. It does not exist within anything inferior to it, since everything exists within it alone. It is eternal, since it does not need anything, for it is absolutely complete. It has never lacked anything in order to be completed by it. Rather, it is always absolutely complete in light. The one is illimitable, since there is nothing before it to limit it. Unfathomable, since there is nothing before it to fathom it. Immeasurable, since there was nothing before it to measure it. Invisible, since nothing has seen it. Eternal, since it exists eternally. Unutterable, since nothing could comprehend it to utter it. Unnameable, since there is nothing before it to give it a name. The one is the immeasurable light, pure, holy, immaculate. Okay, and it goes on, and I wish I could read the whole thing. You can listen to my commentary on my Global Green University website, where I hope to go through all these Gnostic scriptures. The point of this text, you get the flavour of it, in the Orthodox John's Gospel it says, in the beginning was the Word, the Logos. And, let me get the text and quote it exactly, because it's such a marvellous text that I want to get it right. Now, let me find, there's a translation of it. Unfortunately, I have to read it rather than speak it from the heart. My grandfather and his generation knew the Bible pretty much word for word. Okay, so this is the English translation, right? I've got the Greek here and the Latin. In the beginning, the Word, the Logos, already existed. The Logos was with God, and the Word was God. From the very beginning, the Word was with God. Through him, God made all things. Not one thing in all creation was made without him. The Logos was the source of life, and this life brought light to humanity. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never put it out. That's, a beautiful sequence of verses. It's the first 5 verses of the Gospel of John. But it's sort of, it leaves you hungry. If you're a philosopher like me, you want to know, well, what's he talking about? What is this light? Where did it come from? How does it shine? And that's where this apocryphal or secret book of John is so interesting. Because in a sense, it's giving you the backstory to the Gospel of John. And it's absolutely, they come from the same school. Now, there's a lot of debate among scholars, did St. John actually write those words? When? Who was he in reality? Etc. I go into that in my commentary on the Gospel of John in great detail. I try and present the truth that I can sort of work out, and I suppose we'll never know until we finally, meet St. John in the Heavenly Library and can ask him, why he wrote it that way and so on and when. Be nice to kind of work that out a bit beforehand. That's why I love the work of theologians at Oxford and Cambridge and everywhere in the world where they're doing advanced study into the Johannite traditions, including the Gnostic traditions. And all I'm saying here as a scholar, this is my scholarly hat, is that if we're really going to make sense of the Bible and the Gospels fully, in an intellectually rigorous way that can stand with, say, the Jain tradition or the Hindu, these profound schools of thought, or the Islamic or whatever, or the Jewish, the Kabbalistic, then we have to have the whole of the Christian libraries and lineages and heritage on the table to study. Another way of putting it is, imagine you were a Roman senator in the 3rd century, 4th century, and you were debating, should Rome adopt this new religion as its creed? You've been pagans for centuries. You have, Virgil, you have Varro, you have Cicero, you have all the writings of the great Roman scholars as your tradition. You have the Greeks, the Hellenes, the Homer and so on. And suddenly somebody says, no, we're going to become Christians now. Here's their book. And they give you the official Bible, 80 books or whatever, and you're supposed to decide as a Roman senator whether to, totally change the religion of your ancestors and go for this new thing. And you would say, as rightly, you'd say, if you were a clever senator, you'd say, well, okay, so you want me to read that? Is that all there is? Is that it? Where's the rest of it that explains it all? And at this point, if the person was genuine, they would say, well, actually there's this Apocrypha, and there's this books of Enoch, and there's these commentaries of the Testament of Moses, and there's the Testament of Abraham, and there's all these Gnostic books, there's the secret book of John, and the Gospel of Thomas, and so on. Well, if you're a good senator, and you were charged with working out rights and wrongs of this, you'd say, okay, bring it on, put it all on the table. Bring the scrolls, and then we'll look at it all, and then we'll make a decision. That would be logic, right? And it's only if you do that, that whole tradition, what we call Judeo-Christian tradition, actually makes sense. Only if you read the Gospels of all the Gnostic traditions, if you read the Gnostic books, if you read the books of Enoch, if you read the Apocrypha, does actually the thing have any real coherent intellectual weight behind it, in an existential sense, that a deep seeker of meaning, who's on a spiritual search journey, can actually relate to, in my opinion. I'm just saying that, as a teacher and a philosopher. The only other way of doing it is the faith route, right? Which is, you don't want to know anything. You just buy it as a faith package. Well, I don't think that appeals to people with a certain rigorous intellect. I think that's not what the World Intellectual Forum, that's not what my institute is doing. It's not what academia is for. I'm a product of academia. I was taught to use my intellect as God-given. And I believe that the great Christian theologians and scholars of history have the right and the duty to use our reason to find truth in association with our Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, and pagan brethren. So that's really where I'm coming from. That's why I've done this commentary on the Bible, and also why I've published this journal on the Mary Magdalene Studies Association. It's ongoing work, and I think it's very exciting, because what we're doing is reclaiming the whole story. There's nothing more frustrating than somebody just telling half a story and then not finishing it. So, okay. In honour of that quest for the whole story, let me share something else I've been doing this week, which is I took part in a wonderful conference on Zoom with a brilliant, amazing, I love this man, an Islamic scholar called Hassan Abbas, who is a professor in America, in Washington, DC, and he's a professor of strategic studies and, a deeply well-qualified scholar. But he took 7 years out of his life to study the life of Imam Ali, who was the founder of, the fourth caliph and the first of the 12 imams of Shiism. And he's the fountainhead of the Sufi orders, as Hassan discovered in his studies. And I've encountered many Sufis, many Shias, many Sunni scholars in my time, when I taught particularly at the Muslim College with Dr. Zaki Badawi, who was a graduate of the Al-Azhar University, and I've known Sufis and sat in prayer with them. I've travelled and visited mosques all over the world. I'm a sort of surrendered Sufi soul, as I said before, myself. And I love, that lineage. And I've always loved Ali, and I'll tell you for why, because this is a story that I believe to be true, and it's in the Shia tradition. Once on the battlefield, Ali was fighting. He was a very great warrior. He had an amazing two-bladed sword, right? Amazing courage of a man, a lion he was called. But he only did that for peace, and he was the closest friend and follower of Muhammad, and one of the very first to become a surrendered soul, if you want. And but he was there in the thick of the fighting and the battles, and you can read my commentary on the Quran, which I've also done. I've been quite busy in this lifetime. I've done a whole commentary on the Quran, right? And I've gone into this in great detail because it's chronological. And in the thick of one particular battle, in those days it was all just swords and bows and arrows and mostly hand-to-hand fighting, like in the Homeric epics. There was a certain heroism because you were actually, eyeballing the guy and you were fighting away. Like we used to do as kids, in the streets of Kemp Town with little wooden swords. I mean, that was the heroic idea. Now it's all drones dropping bombs and blowing up an entire city, which is un-Islamic, unhuman. But in those days, Ali was in the middle of the battles, and he was in one particular battle, and his opponent, it was a series of like hand-to-hand fights, and his opponent dropped his sword, and he half fell down and he expected to be killed. But Ali just stood over him and sheathed his own sword and said, well, you better get up then, go and get your sword. And the guy, who was a pagan Arab, said to Ali, look, what are you talking about? You won, you can kill me now. And Ali said, no, I can't do that because we're not allowed by divine law to kill an unarmed man. So you better pick your sword up and we'll carry on. And the man said, I don't understand. I thought, I'm trying to kill you, you're trying to kill me. I mean, you've won, shouldn't you kill me now? And I said, no, it's not like that. That's not how it works. And they, a bit like Krishna and Arjuna, they started having a theological discussion in the middle of the battlefield. I mean, I love this. It should be filmed. I still want to see the movie doing justice to Ali. It's never been done. And the one doing justice to Muhammad. It has to be done. There's only that one, The Message, which is quite good, but not comprehensive. We need to film the whole thing. And what Ali says to the opponent is, look, I know it looks like that, but actually in cosmic consciousness, in the divine truth of unity, where we both come from, both our souls come from the same source, the supreme, the one, that the secret book of John just talked about. And they're not at war. They're just like relatives. They're brothers. They're parts of each other. Your soul and mine are one. There is only unity between us. I acknowledge that. I've surrendered to that. You haven't yet. You think I'm your enemy. So you're coming at me, along with your army, to kind of kill me because I've surrendered to the one. And you think I'm, threatening your trade and your scams, your pagan scams in Mecca and, your military capitalism. And so you're coming at me to destroy me. And I'm allowed to defend myself. Yes, the Prophet has said I can do that. But I'm not allowed to cheat. I'm not allowed to misuse sneakiness. I'm not allowed to stab you in the back. I'm not allowed to stab you if you've dropped your sword. I'm not allowed to kill your women. I'm not allowed to poison your wells. There's certain rules. Because even in the midst of this tragedy of this fighting, I have to bear witness to the fact that there is just one. There's a unity. That is what the Shahada means. That is what one bears witness to, that divine unity. So really, we're friends. It's just you don't know it. So that's why, my friend, I can't kill you unless you have your sword in your hand. Anyway, having heard all that, this quintessential moment, the opposing warrior just said, no, look, sorry, Ali, I refuse to go on fighting. I think, I need to know more about all this. I'm certainly not going to try and kill you. You're a very profound person. And he retired from the battlefield. He refused to pick up his sword. And he later became a Muslim, in fact. Now that's a true story in the traditions. And I find that one of the most moving stories of all warfare. It's why when I spoke to Professor Lawrence Friedman, who was Professor of War Studies at King's, and we had a long chat about peace and war, and he said, look, Thomas, stop going on about peace studies. It doesn't exist. There is no peace. Only war's important. Study war. It's much better. You know, it's great for your career. Peace is a dead end. Well, Lawrence, I mean, it's worked for him. He's now a member of the Privy Council. He's a knighted. He served on the Chilcot Committee, and you know, he's fated expert all around the world. But I can't go down that route. You see, my my position is I'm with Ali on the purpose of the fight is not to kill each other. The purpose of the fight is that we defend ourselves on the road back to unity. The purpose of war is peace. And that's what I actually said to Lawrence, but I don't think he understood me. There's no indication that he's ever, you know, activated that part of his brain that conscience is located in. And for him, war is business. But I'm with Ali on this. And so what I can say is what's weird is there's never been a proper, serious, in-depth, detailed historical study of Ali, ever, by an academic. There have been eulogisms, you know, heroic, we love Ali type books, which have given the stories. And you can understand why. I mean, he must have been an amazing man. But this is the first book. Now, Hassan Abbas has written this academic tome, many hundreds of pages, full of footnotes. And I can't wait to get a hold of a copy and review it. Because, and what I did have the honour to do was sit in on this book launch. He was being interviewed by a professor at Princeton, I think, and asked questions about, you know, how he wrote the book, why, what sources he used, and so on. Now, what's so important is that Ali is revered both by the Shia and the Sunni traditions of Islam. And this man, Hassan Abbas, is both. He has a mother on one side, a father on another. He calls himself a sushi Muslim, which I think is a great phrase. And that's why he wanted to write the book, to try and see who this Ali was, right? And he's gone to the sources, which are voluminous, right? And they're in many languages, Arabic, Persian, Turkish, you name it. He's gone to them all. He's also travelled to the places where Ali lived. He's met people that have the local stories, you know. He's travelled all over the Middle East and in search of Ali. And he said that what he did was he's tried to stay neutral. So he's tried to follow that Jain, like seeing it from all sides, that Jain intellectual virtue. He probably doesn't know much about Jainism, but that's what he's doing. And he said he's given the footnotes and told the story from both the Shia and the Sunni perspective. There are many times when they contradict each other. They say that Ali did this that time with that result, and the other one says, no, he did this with that result. And they both have sources for them. So what this author has done, which is a tremendous service to scholarship, is he's given the resources, the references to both narratives. And then he's left it to you to decide. Now that's a very skillful intellectual job. That's a Jain sort of many perspectives operation. And that's needed in order to bring peace between our dear Shia and Sunni brethren and our Sufi brethren, and to stop the wars in Syria. You know, Biden, that's intellectually very trivial to just drop a bomb. Don't go back down that route. That's what the Bush is. That's what the Trump maniacs want. I mean, no. Read Hassan Abbas's book. Put him in charge of peacemaking. And let's build the Nonagon to house an Institute of Peace in America for the Department of Peace that tries to heal the splits between Shia and Sunni, or Jew and Palestinian, or Muslim and Christian and Arab and Israeli and so on. Because that's the intellectual challenge that we should be taking on. Now, okay, it's not for everyone, but certainly Hassan Abbas is, I think, leading the way on that front. And thank you so much for writing that book. So, yeah, I think like Ali that we have to stop the fighting. We have to put the swords down and remember that unity. Now, it doesn't have a name on it. It's not this God or that God. As it said in the Apocryphon of John, it's beyond the names. In the perennial philosophy, this light, this pure light, is the source of all the names, but is not itself named. It's the Logos itself. The divine intelligence, if you want to translate it, or the word, as the English language puts it. So, to me, to conclude what I'm saying here, the planet needs peace above all, pax, which means ontological relationship of mutual cohabiting of equals in love. You know, we need peace. Through enlightenment. We can only get that through enlightenment. And fortunately I've written a textbook about that called Enlightenments Plural, when I've argued that there isn't just one route map to enlightenment. There are many, and all of them are valid. Pursue any of them, you get up the mountain, and then you meet each other when you get up the mountain. So there's chapters on Confucianism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism and so on, Zoroastrianism, paganism, Druidry. You know, this I wrote at the time I was doing the beginnings of the periodic table, when I was teaching full-time in British schools as a religious studies tutor. And it's still my sort of founding text, because if we have a plurality of enlightenments that coexist, and we don't promote ours above yours, we can put the swords down. There's no need to kill about this. So we can have that peace catharsis through enlightenment, or we carry on with the war catharsis, and, you know, of what I call endarkenment, which is based on lies, on corruption, on deception. You know, the powers of Drudge, the compromat, the Brexits, the Trump rioters. Well, I know what I want. I stand for the peace enlightenment through, you know, a proper catharsis of knowledge and wisdom. the universal gnosis within all the traditions. It's not easy. It takes many years. I mean, I'm summing up in a little short talk, an hour long, the fruits of, you know, many decades of study in libraries and university campuses all over the world, the Vatican Library, the University of Jerusalem, the British Museum, the London Library. You know, I've spent years working on this, and that's why I wrote a PhD up about it all. So you can read my books and study them there. Another metaphor I use, and this came out of my reading of the Gnostics. I've been working on my religious mathematics book this week on Gnosticism. One of the Gnostic traditions reinterpreted the labours of Hercules because they drew on both the pagan classical heritage and the Judeo-Christian traditions. They saw themselves as looking for the universal wisdom within all, like the Hermetic wisdom of Egypt, which they were very close to. One of the great scholars of that was Zosimus, who had a beautiful beloved called Theosophica, who was his twin soul, if you want. They couldn't be together for various reasons. I'm not sure why they couldn't just get married and, you know, support each other, but for some reason they couldn't. And he addressed his books to her, Theosophica. And what I think is very interesting about that is that her name is a clue to something very important in Greek. Theos means obviously divine or God. But the second part of the name, if I can just find the exact, Theosophica is sometimes translated as fear of God, from sebomai, but it actually means to revere or adore, and reverent, and it comes from a Greek root, which has this sense of reverence of. And it's the origin of our word, why we call a vicar. We say a reverend, Dr. So-and-so. It's that concept of reverence. And that's what we're in danger of losing. That's what sebomai meant. It also could be interpreted as to be religious. The very concept of what it means to be religious meant to have this faculty of sebomai, which is also used in Homer, and it meant to honour with pious awe. And it's also used to describe the feeling of awe that we get, or shame, if we're about to do something disgraceful or wrongful. We know deep down we have this sebomai, this awe that, no, I can't do that. I can't steal that money or defame that person or, God forbid, hurt, wound, kill, or whatever. No, because we have this reverential awe for the divine, this sebomai. And that's the origin of Zosimus's girlfriend's name, Theospia. And Zosimus was a Gnostic who combined his universal studies. He was from Akhmim in the middle of Egypt on the Nile, where he studied all this stuff, and Jung loved him and wrote a great study of his visions and dream visions and so on. Now it was in those Gnostic circles they explained that the labours of Hercules, the 12 labours, are to be reinterpreted metaphorically. We are all called to be Hercules in this time. If you want to be heroic, don't join the kind of the death cult of Brexit. Don't join the death cult of capital rioters and QAnon types. Join the authentic Herculean task of trying to provide clean water for everybody on this planet, to provide proper access to housing for everyone on this planet, to provide food for everyone on this planet, so no child, no person has to go hungry. There are people in Texas now who've been frozen out who've just lost all this stuff. There are people in pandemic who can't access what they basically need. Another labour of Hercules is to provide education for everybody, so that we can all access. I've been incredibly fortunate, I think, looking back at my life, my parents, my roots. We were a family that honoured education, and so I went to university. I studied philosophy, I studied history, I studied everything, and times the speed of light, because my culture, my heritage valued knowledge. Everyone should have that chance. Why can't everybody on this planet, that is what I call universal enlightenment. And we've now got the chance with the internet, with the digitization of the world's knowledge. We can do this, and we can all reach enlightenment. We can have a peace planet. That is the labours of Hercules for our time. We can get the Archbishop of Canterbury to publish the full Bible finally, after only like 1800 years or so. Better late than never is what I would say. And we can chew on this stuff properly. St. Paul said we will see, eventually, not through the dark glass, not through the blurry windscreen, but face to face. Well, that's the time. That time has come now. If not now, when? As Rabbi Hillel said. Okay, so that's it, folks. I'm going to finish there, and I'm going to read a poem as a celebration of the bardic arts, which from time to time I get a poem that comes to me, and we'll see which one. Gosh, okay, this is appropriate.